Hi guys, thanks for all the questions from my 10k Q&A video. I'm going to come here with the answers now, and apologies if I don't read your question. There were some kind of repeat questions there, so hopefully the answer's in there somewhere, but I'm going to give it my best go. Should be fun. And of course I've gone through the questions, printed them out, but I haven't written answers because I want it to be fairly spontaneous, and I like the test actually, like the pressure anyway. So let's get straight in with it. Logan, straight away. I'll pick one question. Some have asked multiple, which is great. Do you think Scotland can win the Six Nations in the next 10 years? Well, yes, absolutely. Why? Well, they nearly won it this year. If you look at their results, they weren't far away. So absolutely. Mossy Slopes has said a question about collaborations, Squidge, 2 Cents Rugby, etc. I've done some collaborations in the past and really enjoyed them. Did a really interesting one, picking a World 15 in a draft format before. Have a look at that. That was really good fun with Unbiased Rugby and Hacker Time Rugby. That was great. But I do need to do some more. I do need to basically reach out and just get cracking on that. So thank you very much. Okay, Matthew Campbell, if you could take any player in the world right now to improve England's side, who would it be? Well, I think it would be a 9, because I think we need a new 9, so let's take Dupont, why not? Question from Nice and Sleazy, I think you comment a lot, which is fantastic, thank you very much. One of my daughters plays regional rugby in Wales, that's fantastic news. Why don't you report on women's rugby in Six Nations? Well, completely great point. I do have time limits, but I do want to do some women's rugby reporting, and the Six Nations is on right now on iPlayer, so I'm definitely going to try and get some videos out for that. So thanks for the question. Sam Kined-Bar, if I said that right, sorry, oh wrong, sorry. Should the Six Nations include a 6th place relegation to the Rugby European Championship and then promotion to the Six Nations? Now, I think there's a few questions about this. Now, it's not so much should they, it's, will they? Because these entities, they're not run by, European Rugby, World Rugby, anything like that. They're run by themselves, essentially. Or sorry, the Six Nations, I should say, is run by itself. So it's got no vested interest in just being nice for the sake of it or doing things for the sake of rugby. Now, so I know it sounds cynical, but the Six Nations will do whatever's best for the Six Nations. If they think relegation and promotion's the best, they'll push for that. And if they don't and they're happy with their financial situation, they'll stick. Ran Dodrick has said, I know it could be a video in itself, but my personal favourite rugby-based pub question is who would win a North versus South Hemisphere game? Who would win? I think it would still be the Southern Hemisphere, actually. Northern Hemisphere rugby is definitely getting closer, but I still think a combined Southern Hemisphere team would be amazing. Sean said, you mentioned the 9s that Scotland should have a look at in the summer. If you could pick 2, who would it be from that list? I would probably go for George Horne and Dobby. From those 2, who would you take? What's your all-time England starting 15? Now, I think I've done a similar video on this sort of thing before, to have a look back at my back catalogue as such. The problem with all time is when you compare across eras, it gets very tricky, especially when you go beyond the full-time professional era. So it does depend whether it's professional or not. But I'll have a look. If I haven't done a video like that, I will do a video on it because that's a good one. So thank you for that. Sion Williams, do you think Italy should be replaced in the Six Nations? Now, I thought this question was going to come up, and then which team? The problem is, if you get rid of Italy and replace them with someone else, Georgia, for example, would they do any better? And I think the answer is no. There's no one in Europe that would do any better, particularly. And the only real viable alternative is someone from outside of Europe, like a South Africa potentially. But would that happen? I don't know. So at the moment, no. I think Italy probably need a few years to see if this very new bunch of players can get competitive, which they're not at the moment. Alex Gold says, from which countries are your viewers from? Great question. It's really interesting in YouTube when you look at the breakdown of viewers and countries, and they are literally from all over the globe. Of course, the majority are UK and Ireland, but you really get every single country covered, every weird island or area you haven't heard of. It's brilliant. They may well be expats from the UK and Ireland, I don't know, but all over, which is just fantastic. Fraser, how can the Lions defeat South Africa? Wow, that's just like a huge question. Loads of videos on that coming, I'm sure. I mean, of course they can beat South Africa. They've got great players, but so can South Africa beat the Lions, and in multiple ways. What I think they will go for, kind of changing your question, I guess, is they tend to start with a really basic game plan and just try and get those basics correct. The scrum, the line out, the defence, the kicking game. And they will think, if we can beat them in those areas, we've got a chance with anything extra we do or anything special our individuals do. So I imagine that's the way they're going to try and go about it. Italian Rebel says, do you feel that the clock is managed correctly by referees? Many times clock continues to go even when the player stopped. Many refs don't always immediately say time off. Great question. Now, it's very random when the clock goes on and off sometimes, and it's definitely not fair. Some do it more than others. What I would say is take that responsibility away from the referees. They've got enough to do. When there's a stoppage in play, then maybe they have to decide a protocol of when the play is started and stopped. So maybe take it away from the referee. We've got a question here from John Wakely. What made you decide to start making a YouTube channel, and where would you like to take it? Love the channel. Thank you very much. Basically, I played a lot, then I coached a lot, and now I'm doing this a lot, and I enjoy all of them. So just enjoyment, really. That's why. Why do people look down on the Pro 14? This is from James Taylor. When it comes, they continue to deliver European champions and the majority of Six Nations champions. That's a good question, actually. I think the Pro 14 does get a bit of bad press, mainly because it's not as competitive maybe as many would like. And again, we see this year with the Irish teams dominating. So I think that's why. I think it's more frustration. But for quality, obviously, there's a lot of quality in there. So it's a tricky one. I understand why people say it should be better. I think it's more that, the level of competition, maybe it's not quite everyone can beat everyone all the time. But good question anyway. The King goes for, do you think World Rugby should switch out the autumn internationals for a competition in non-Rugby World Cup or Lions years? The problem with doing that is it then stops the teams playing lots of different teams. It kind of restricts who plays who, and then maybe you don't get sides meeting each other who normally would. So I'd probably go for a no on that one. Could this French team go on to show the dominance of the 2015 All Blacks? Yes, they could. The 2015 All Blacks were just all-round good in every area, so the French just need to tighten up in a few areas. Do you think the odds are on Gregor Townsend becoming a coach for the Lions this year? From Willie Kenny, I think that's how you say it. I'd like to see Gregor Townsend maybe as the attack coach, so I think the odds are pretty good. The Scottish attack's been really exciting. Okay, question on Argentina. How do you see Argentina at this moment on the international level? Really good. I mean, Argentina have completely changed the way they play from how they used to play. They play a lot more modern brand of rugby, very fast, very exciting, but still can be very physical. And, they've been competing against the best of the Southern Hemisphere for a long time now and holding their own and getting good wins. So, yeah, very good. Connor Halligan, what's your opinion on the increase in red cards in the Premiership and Six Nations? My short answer to that is coaches and players need to adapt to these new regulations, these new interpretations just quicker. So I think the onus is now on the players and the coaches to adapt to it. Tom Murphy, can you see Leinster dominating European rugby in the future? Yep. James Marvel, what do you think of Sam Simmons? Does he agree a chance in the England team? Yeah, of course he deserves a chance in the England team. He is unbelievable. When do you think he's like to get this opportunity? Well, okay, I'll go out on a limb and I'll say next England squad. Another one from James. Okay, I'll give you another one. Who would be your best English back row? I think it would be Curry, Underhill and Sam Simmons. Whether that's balanced enough is another question. Mark Johnson. Should Eddie be fired? So I'll just leave it at that one as one question. I'll go for a no. I've done a video on that previously, so have a look at that video. That's a big question, and that's why I did a big video on it indeed. Scotty Bott has gone for, if not rugby, then what other sport would you like to see deep diving into for analysis? Great question. And I know the answer to this one. It would absolutely be Grand Tour cycling. Tour de France, amazingly tactical sport, even though you think it's just plain physical. It's not. The team, the way they use the team to try and get one or maybe two riders to the end of the race is amazing. So the analysis on that is just mind-blowing. So it would be that one. Joe Boone Music, if you were picking the next England squad to go to the World Cup, who would replace Mako and Billy, Farrell and Daly? Very, very tricky. I think a like-for-like-ish replacement for Billy maybe would be Don Brandt potentially. Maybe Tom Willis actually might be a guy coming through as well. Farrell, I think Piers O'Connor of Bristol's a really good replacement. And for Daly, I'd go for Stewart of Leicester. Magnus Peacock, who is the most entertaining player to watch in World Rugby right now? I'd say Finn Russell's pretty close, to be honest. Just absolute bag of tricks. You never know what you're going to get, and amazing skills. Right, another question from Nice and Sleazy. Who has been your favourite Welsh player of all time? Well, I think Scott Quinnell was brilliant. I just loved his passion, when singing the anthem, the way he played, just brilliant. Carlo, do you watch any other sports besides rugby? Yeah, basically all of them, to be honest. Kelvin Hemborough. If the Six Nations could only pick from 2 pro clubs for their countries, which team would they be and who would be the strongest? Well, I'll keep that nice and simple. Let's go for Ireland, Munster and Leinster, pretty much the Irish squad anyway, so probably them. Now, here's an interesting one. Van Drug, do you think the game has gone soft? Now, it depends what you mean by soft. You certainly can't punch people and be violent in that way, but I go for no. The collisions are absolutely brutal, higher than they've ever been, and you literally cannot be soft to play the game, that's for sure. Mox, do you think that Lewis Rees-Zammit has the potential to be better than Shane Williams? Well, I think it's blasphemy to say that he will be, but I guess he could be. Straight line speed, he could probably beat him in that. He's got the height, he's probably got the size, but I don't think he could beat him for footwork. So depends what you like, I suppose. Maybe he could match him for try scoring. We'll see. He certainly started young enough. Lee Cheatham, is there a rugby law you'd like to change? I'd say the main thing about laws is more enforce the ones that are there first and then see how it goes. Jester. Don't know if that's a Top Gun one. Question. We'll go for the second question. Crooked scrum feeds. Should the existing law be enforced, gotten rid of, and just let the scrum half do whatever? I'd say enforce it. Straight down the middle would be great, I think. I mean, the hooker's still closer to you, so you should have an advantage. They've kind of changed it so you only have to be overlapping the midline. I'm not sure if that's the way to go, but yeah, just enforce it. Attack Pattern Delta wants to know where his TV remote is. Well, that's easy, of course. Where you last left it. Something, a Hugbear. Do you think Italy will be competitive soon due to the vast amount of talent they have coming through? I hope so. I really hope so. Some good players in there. The likes of Garbisi, I think, is brilliant. Can they get Pelledri back? That was a big loss in the Six Nations. So, yeah, I hope so. Jack LaRue, who's the best 10 in the world? I'll go for Richie Mwanga. Brilliant. He's playing so well at the moment. Really good. Cole Shivers, who is your favourite commentator and pundit? Again, I'm pretty easy on that one. Brian O'Driscoll. Players who have played at the top level certainly know more than the rest of us, but then not all of them can kind of convey that well. And also the ones that are out of the game a bit too soon have a vested interest. They've got too many friends in the game. They can't quite say what they think. Driscoll's just in that sweet spot where he's been in the game soon enough, if you like, to know a lot, but also long enough away so he's not really treading on people's toes so much. Ben Thompson, if you were having a dinner party, what 3 guests would you invite? Okay, one from the rugby world. I'd love to have Joan Lomu there, the late Joan Lomu. One not from the rugby world. I think I'll go for Elon Musk. And one left field. Well, you can come, Ben. How about that? Ben Steen, if you brought Sam Simmons into the England squad, which back row would drop out? Well, at the moment, that's easy. Billy on form. Hugo Taylor, do you think that adding Fiji and Japan to the Rugby Championship would improve the competition? And if so, when do you think they should be added? It would be brilliant, wouldn't it? It'd be absolutely amazing to see Fiji in a regular competitive tournament. Every year would just transform their game. But it comes down to money, doesn't it? So when should it happen? Well, straight away, but it probably won't. Okay, we're getting there. I'm going even quicker now. Is Eddie Jones trying to get his best for a payoff? I don't think so. I don't think that's the reason. I think that's tongue-in-cheek. Chris writes, if you had to choose a Lions starting 15 with at least 3 players from each nation, what would your team be? I think really the question is, which 3 Scots and which 3 English would you pick? Because they're the ones that are often least represented. For the English, I'd probably say we'll go for a Toje, Curry and Anthony Watson. For Scotland, probably Gray, then Hogg and maybe Harris actually, or Van der Merwe. Bedtime with Ben. When you watch a game of rugby, what do you look out for your analysis, etc.? Well, basically, I just try and enjoy the game and write what I see. I try and get the video out quite quickly, so I'm trying to just get across, the vibe of the game, the emotion of the game, and then the tactical stuff I see in that as well. Who's your favourite player of all time? Well, it is Jonah Lomu. Yus van der Westhuizen, very close second. Do you think a Pacific Island version of the Lions would be a good thing? It would be unbelievable. If someone can cough up loads of money, that would be great. But starting new teams is so hard because the calendar's so congested. That's the problem. I mean, the Lions is fighting for its spot, and that's been around for ages. What are your thoughts of a possible Northern Hemisphere team being formed? Well, the same answer goes. Starting new teams is just a nightmare. I don't think it would happen, unfortunately. Best team in the world at the moment, Rodri Jenkins. Well, I think you go and say South Africa until we see otherwise. I think that's fair. Jean-Philippe Brochard. A few questions there. Let's go for the first one. What do you think of the arrival of CVC and private funds? It's potentially fantastic and potentially disastrous. You just don't know. It really depends on how they behave. If they behave well as such, it could be amazing. If they don't, it could be awful. Isaac Armstrong. Is Scottish rugby continue to grow and grow? And you go on to add a bit more detail to that. Well, they're certainly doing well at the moment. Like I said, they could have won the Six Nations. So, yeah, I think it's in a decent place. Rory Cartledge. What do you think is the most underrated rugby team? Oh, do you know what? I'd go for Italy. It's the fact they're in the Six Nations makes them look bad as such. If they were playing in different competitions, I think they'd do great, to be honest. Owen Mudford, what would your 15-a-side be from Premiership players who aren't internationals, etc.? Well, I've got a similar sort of video coming out on England soon, so watch that one. Lee Bale, do you think Wales are starting to play like a Southern Hemisphere side? Well, I'd say Scotland and Wales maybe are as well. So yeah, maybe. Harry Preston, which is the best domestic league in the world? I don't know. Probably Super Rugby Aotearoa at the moment, actually. Francesco goes for favourite football team. Well, English national team, always like following them in the big championships. Mr. Clean, do you think eligibility needs to be more limited? Well, certainly it's getting better. 5 years residency, a lot better than 3. So let's see how that goes first of all. Predictions for the Lions tour. How many games will they win? I don't know. But captain-wise, I think Alan Wynne-Jones, for me, definitely looking a good option. Who's your Premiership team? Probably between Bath and Bristol. West Country lived there for a while, so those two. Fraser McGowan, which away matches have you been to? Which is your favourite? Well, I'd go for simply anything in the Millennium Stadium. Let's call it the Millennium Stadium because that's what it's going to be to me. Amazing stadium, brilliantly designed, steep roof, fantastic. Was going to go and watch England versus Wales until fans were banned. I still want to do that. That'd be amazing. Henry Herbert, should the Six Nations become a Five Nations again? And a few more other bits. Well, the thing is, it wouldn't really work that great with Five Nations, unfortunately, because if you remember back to when it was the Five Nations, you'd have weekends when one of the sides just wouldn't play. It'd be awful. So at least now it's all uniform, and when they do play, they all play on that weekend. Joe Richardson, should Sam Simmons go to the Lions tour? I'd say no, just because it would mean he would displace someone who I think really deserves it and has proven it. Do you see a trend of smaller athletics backs continuing, or more big wingers making a comeback? Size is always popular, so absolutely they can make a comeback. Lions Bolter, maybe bring George Cruz in to run the line out. Don't think he will though. Philippa Hanrahan, what's your favourite Tier 2 team, excluding Japan? Well, do you know what? I've got quite a soft spot for Georgia because it's their national sport and I love that enthusiasm about rugby. So them, even though the style of play is probably not there yet, I really want them to do well. Alexander the Average, what a great name. What current players do you think will make great coaches? It's so hard. You've got players like Borthwick, who kind of obviously would have been a great coach when he even came to Bath when he was young. He was already known as a brilliant line-out tactician. But then you've got players like Cockrell, who you probably wouldn't have thought would be a good coach, but is. So I don't think you can tell, really. Will Hatton, what's your favourite national anthem? Okay, it's got to be between Welsh national anthem and the New Zealand one. Just the emotion they bring is fantastic. Here it is, last set of questions. The Mighty Bob, if you could take one person from each Six Nations team, who would it be? Italy would be Pelledri, England Atoje, Scotland Hogg, Wales Rhys Sammet, and Ireland I would take, there's a few options there, Henshaw. George Hand, do you think that rugby is going in the right direction with sponsorship and professionalism? I would say it's inevitably going in the direction. I'm not sure there's a lot you can do about it when you start going down that route. At the moment, doing okay. Jack LaRue, did Wales deserve to win the Six Nations? Well, I've stopped using the word deserve in sport because it's so diverse with luck, and there's injuries and good play and bad play, and sometimes you get what you deserve, sometimes you don't. So when you win, you win. So I kind of just leave that phrase alone. Cameron Blackwood, what do you think is the likelihood of Scotland winning the Six Nations? I think I mentioned that one, pretty good. Monty Ratu, Fiku was the most underrated player in the Six Nations. Agree or disagree? Well, if he was underrated, agree. But most people who talk about him rate him highly. So great player. Kabir considers, it appears there is a reluctance to introduce promotion relegation. Again, I've mentioned that sort of thing. It's not really going to happen when the Six Nations is its own entity, and it will only do it if it thinks it will make them more money. Ollie Harrison, who do you think has the future 10-shirt for Ireland? Will Johnny make it to the World Cup? He may well make it to the World Cup. But on what we've seen, I think Joey Carberry's got the best shot apart from him. What do you think is England's future star 15 players like George Martin, Kapoku, Baxter, etc.? Well, I've got a video coming out on that very shortly, so stay tuned, Jack. Okay, I've made it. I know it's a long video, but I did want to make sure everyone got their question answered, or at least one of those answers related to your question. I really enjoyed that, guys, and really appreciate the subscriptions and the comments and all that sort of thing. So a bit of a video for the guys who have been following the channel, but I'll be back with a new video very soon, so I will see you then.